You're not here by accident. Something deep within you, quiet yet compelling, has drawn you to this moment, to this exact point in time, and by the time you reach the end, you'll understand that this wasn't just a random event. It's a message, a signal from the deeper part of your being, gently steering you without drama or noise. Because true transformation doesn't erupt like a storm. It doesn't announce itself with grand gestures or blazing signs. It moves like a whisper in the background, subtle, soft, but undeniable. Real change isn't about becoming someone else or layering new traits over the old. It's about peeling away what never truly fit, about uncovering the original version of you, the one buried under expectations, roles, and stories you no longer need. This journey is not about shouting who you are. It's about quietly recognizing it. It feels like waking up and realizing that you've simply outgrown the person you once thought you were, the spaces you used to feel comfortable in, the conversations that used to engage you, even the parts of yourself you used to cling to. They all start to feel unfamiliar, like echoes from another life. Carl Jung once pointed out that genuine spiritual development isn't about polishing who we are on the outside. It's about going beyond the constructed identity entirely. It's about letting go of what was built out of defense, fear, or imitation, and uncovering what has always been steady and real underneath. One of the first signs that you're shifting internally is how you relate to your own story. The past no longer holds you the way it once did. You can remember it, even feel it, but it no longer shapes your sense of self. There's no anger or nostalgia, just understanding. You can see it for what it is without the impulse to justify it or explain it to anyone. You don't carry your story like a badge or a burden. You simply carry its wisdom. And this brings a quiet kind of peace, a feeling that you don't need to be understood to feel whole, that your experiences, your pain, your lessons don't need to be shared to be real. Your stillness, your silence, becomes a kind of respect for yourself, for your growth. Where there used to be emotional reactivity, there is now space. The things that once provoked strong feelings in you now pass through you like wind, through an open window. The people who once held power over your emotional world begin to drift away, not because you're resisting them, but because the parts of you that held onto them have released their grip. They simply don't stick to you anymore. You're no longer run by feelings alone, not because you're numb, but because you've developed clarity. You can sense when your reaction is coming from the current moment, and when it's echoing something old, something unresolved. And in that awareness, you gain freedom. Your inner dialogue begins to change. The thoughts that used to loop for safety or self-judgment start to fade. You're not trying to earn your worth or atone for your past or prove anything anymore. You just keep walking forward because something within you knows everything you've been through brought you to this point, and that's enough. There's a certain kind of knowing that doesn't arise from thought, logic, or analysis. It comes from a deeper place, from the soul. And when this inner clarity begins to surface, you find the older version of yourself fading, not vanishing completely, but quietly losing its grip. You don't forget who you were. You simply stop residing in that space. That old self becomes more like a memory than an identity. As this inner shift occurs, you begin to feel lighter, not because life gets easier, but because you're no longer dragging the weight of who you thought you had to be. The choices you now make emerge from clarity, not from old conditioning. You stop telling yourself the same fixed stories. This is just the way I am, or I can't help it. Not because you've battled with them, but because they no longer resonate. They feel outdated, irrelevant to the person you're growing into. You begin to see that your soul never required labels or stories to be whole. Transformation, in its truest sense, isn't about disowning your past. It's about thanking it and stepping forward without needing to carry it all with you. The masks you once wore out of necessity, the roles you played to feel accepted or safe, start slipping away. You no longer perform out of fear or repeat cycles just to feel connected. And when you release all of that without bitterness or resistance, it's the clearest sign that something profound has shifted. You're no longer living on autopilot or reacting from the wounds of yesterday. You are now rooted in something far more authentic. This internal change begins to ripple into how you relate with others, not because you've strategized or planned to be different, but because your center has changed. You start connecting with people from a calmer, more truthful place. You no longer search for others to complete you or prove your worth. You're not waiting for someone to recognize your value, because you've finally learned to recognize it within yourself. Your presence is no longer something you negotiate with or offer in exchange for comfort. You are simply here, whole and steady. Your past relationships may have been built on silent compromises, hidden wounds, or emotional dependencies, but now there is room to pause, to breathe, to choose consciously. You no longer absorb everything around you without discernment. Your empathy becomes grounded. Your generosity flows not from depletion or a desire to be needed, but from balance and fullness. And in that balance, everything transforms. You stop using relationships to fix what's broken within. You stop needing conversation to avoid quiet or affection to cover emptiness. What you offer comes from abundance, not lack. And that is what real change looks like, not the loud declarations, but the quiet certainty that you are enough as you are. When your past is no longer the lens you view yourself through. When your emotions become guides instead of chains. When your story is something you hold with reverence, but not as identity, that's when you begin to remember your essence. The truth of who you are emerges not with force, but with grace. Even when people no longer align with you, there's no inner drama, no sense of betrayal. Your emotional peace isn't dictated by who chooses to stay. That dependency dissolves. You no longer hand over your sense of calm to someone else's presence or absence. That subtle, unseen shift changes your entire world. Emotional self-reliance isn't cold or detached, it's expansive. It's the kind of freedom that steadies you, not one that isolates. You're no longer escaping or clinging. You're just being, fully and sincerely. And this presence of yours, the one that once lingered quietly in the background, now becomes the way you love, not loudly, not urgently, but with depth and truth. A love that doesn't ask for permission to exist, doesn't trade itself for validation. A love that is consistent, honest, and whole. A love that simply is. It becomes peaceful not because you're trying to show how far you've come, but because you no longer need to. Your connections begin to rise from a place of inner truth, not from the pressure to maintain appearances or roles you've outgrown. You stop pouring energy into conversations that feel empty, into relationships that only survive on nostalgia or routine. Your energy becomes more precise, more selective, and anything misaligned begins to naturally fall away. It may hurt, but the pain brings with it a strange kind of relief and newfound clarity. Where once you made choices out of fear of abandonment, of missing out, of being unworthy, you now make them from calmness. You've befriended silence. You sit with it not as punishment, but as peace. You've come to realize that being with someone who doesn't truly understand, you can feel far lonelier than standing alone. And so, you stand, even when it means leaving behind what once felt like love. You begin to see the difference between passion and truth, between drama and genuine depth. You recognize that real connection is quiet, rooted, and stable, while what constantly demands struggle to survive is usually hiding a deeper emptiness. You stop needing to prove your growth. You don't explain why some paths no longer feel right. Your presence begins to express what your words used to, and without meaning to. It stirs something in others. Some will pull away, some will lean in, but for reasons far more honest than before. And you're okay with both, because now your sense of self doesn't depend on who stays or who goes. It is you who sets the tone, who defines the relationship, not the other way around. What remains in your life now is there because it aligns, not because you're trying to hold it in place. This quiet shift in how you relate to the world changes everything. What once felt critical now quietly fades. It's not rejection, it's just that your vision is clearer. You've met the darkest parts of yourself and no longer need others to carry your weight or to temporarily fill your empty spaces. The old version of you sought affirmation from outside, craved closeness at any cost. That part of you is no longer at the wheel. Now, you recognize true connection by how it expands you, not overwhelms you, not asks you to shrink. It doesn't demand you to compromise your truth. It celebrates it. As you connect from this renewed sense of self, your relationships evolve. They feel lighter, more grounded, less about noise and more about resonance, the quiet harmony of being deeply understood, without needing to perform. Boundaries come from love now, not from fear. They don't shut others out, They clear space, shape your energy, protect what's growing within. You no longer exhaust yourself trying to water what refuses to bloom. You no longer hold on because of fear of scarcity. You've stepped into a new rhythm, one that doesn't apologize for change. You're not asking permission to grow anymore. That, in itself, is a sign your inner compass has changed. It's no longer your wounded self making the decisions, it's your soul. And your soul only says yes to what truly feeds your spirit, lifts you, and brings you back home to yourself. You now understand that companionship isn't meant to fix or complete you. It's there to walk beside you, to share the person you've already become. You don't search for shelter in others anymore, because you've made a home within. And this kind of wholeness isn't about isolation, it's about emotional maturity. You've stopped carrying what isn't yours. You no longer take on the pain others won't face. You refuse to get lost in trying to fix what isn't ready to be healed. The cycles that once trapped you now unravel, because the version of you that kept repeating them is simply gone. There was a time you tried to feel worthy by shrinking yourself, dim your light, just to fit inside someone else's version of enough. But now, you've come to understand that genuine love isn't about self-abandonment disguised as devotion. It's not about giving up parts of yourself to be accepted. True love is steady, unforced, it's connection without dependency, presence without expectation. And from this calm, clear space, life starts to unfold in ways that are both subtle and profound. You become a quiet force of change, not because you set out to be anyone's guide, but because your very presence, aligned and grounded, reflects something deeply real. That energy touches others, sometimes waking them to truths they've long ignored. Some will welcome this shift, others may push back, but regardless of their response, your peace remains untouched, because your bond with others no longer rises from responsibility or performance. It grows from the freedom of being exactly who you are. In that sacred space, a new understanding begins to form. The most enduring connections aren't those that make grand promises, but the ones that hold space for mutual growth. This kind of connection only becomes possible after you've walked through your own inner fire. You've faced your past self not with judgment, but with compassion, and chosen to gently release it. Not because it was wrong, but because it no longer fits. That old version of you was a protector, doing what it thought was necessary. But protection is no longer the priority. You don't need to armor yourself to feel loved. The search for approval has ended. You're not performing anymore. You've arrived in your truth, and that alone is more than enough. From that space, your energy begins to resonate with a clarity that doesn't demand attention, it simply radiates. And in that clarity, you discover a new form of closeness. It's not about sharing every scar or retelling the whole story. It's about showing up fully, honestly, without pretending or filtering yourself. You don't hide behind personas anymore. Being misunderstood no longer disturbs your peace. Being unseen doesn't shake your sense of worth. That's because your value no longer depends on someone else's gaze. It rests in the bond you've formed with yourself, a bond forged in quiet moments, during long nights where you chose not to return to old patterns, and days where you held yourself up when nothing else could. From that deep inner foundation, the person you once were gently steps aside, not because you exiled them, but because you've outgrown that skin. You can now look back at your past self with kindness, recognizing their efforts, their fears, and their good intentions. That version of you did their best with what they knew, and you honor them for it. But now, you are not in survival mode. You are creating. From this new ground of conscious creation, there's no room for old rigid patterns. Now there's space for softness, for quiet power. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth or argue your place in the world. Your soul simply exists in its truth, and in doing so, becomes a gentle invitation to those around you to do the same. Every relationship you allow into your life now mirrors this new presence, not demanding, not possessive, but affirming. Love is no longer something heavy to carry. It supports without smothering. You don't give from a place of emptiness, but from fullness. You choose not to escape loneliness, but to celebrate alignment. Your view of life evolves. You begin to see how what once seemed unjust was actually preparing you. What you once called failure becomes a necessary turning point. You stop seeing yourself as someone life happened to, and begin to see yourself as someone life moved through. Even your pain starts to make sense in a way it didn't before. Transcending who you once were isn't just about patching up wounds. It's about rising above them, gaining the perspective to see the hidden lessons within the chaos, not because it feels good, but because your inner sight has grown too wise to see things the way it once did. That shift is irreversible. Once expanded, you can't return to smallness. Even your sense of time changes. You no longer obsess over outcomes or force the pace of your path. You no longer grasp at what drifts away or cling to what isn't ready. You begin to live in harmony with your own rhythm, not the ticking of clocks or demands of others, but the steady beat of your deeper knowing. That inner rhythm reshapes your entire world. Your priorities shift. What once consumed your attention now fades, and what was once taken for granted becomes sacred. You begin to listen more, to speak less, to value the stillness that once made you restless. And in that stillness, you don't just find peace, you find yourself. Pause. You've started to move with trust, even when clarity isn't guaranteed. You've stopped needing every answer before taking the next step now. You just need to feel in harmony with your path. That sense of alignment is enough. Because something deep within you understands. The soul doesn't require full understanding. To keep walking forward, it only needs to stay connected to what feels true. That truth, your truth, has become your inner compass. You're no longer guided by fear of messing up, nor pushed by the pressure to meet others' expectations. You no longer operate from old wounds or past conditioning. Instead, your actions come from a quiet honoring of the present moment. This subtle shift changes everything about how you live and how you see. You no longer force meaning out of everything that happens. You've realized that wisdom often blooms in hindsight, not in the thick of it. That realization grants you a mature kind of surrender, one where you stop wrestling for control and stop demanding answers on the spot. You've softened, not in fragility, but in quiet strength. This softness is not weakness, it's clarity without struggle, presence without performance. Your strength now lives quietly within, unwavering and deeply rooted. You feel no need to publicize your process or explain your healing. Your silence says more than explanations ever could. As a result, your presence shifts. You begin to walk through life differently. Small details stand out. Simple pauses, slight glances, brief moments, they all hold weight now. You're not consumed with collecting milestones or performing your progress. For the world, your growth is measured by what stirs inside you. You feel it in how you wake, in how peacefully you sit with yourself, in how still you remain amid chaos. Growth is no longer a performance. It's the gentle hum within you that remains even when life swirls unpredictably. To move beyond your old self is not to escape your life, but to rise within it. You're no longer bound by who you used to be. You live from a wider, clearer state of awareness while staying grounded in your body. Your home, your now. No longer are you reacting on impulse. You're choosing carefully, consciously how to engage with the world. This intentionality becomes the root of your transformation. It changes the way you experience everything. What used to weigh you down now invites your full presence. What once exhausted you now passes through you quietly, no longer gripping your energy. You're no longer caught in resistance or bitterness, even if no one else sees it. The shift within you is real, it is lasting and powerful. Your peace no longer depends on circumstances lining up perfectly. It flows from how true you are to yourself, moment by moment. That inner loyalty becomes sacred. It's not something you bargain with. It centers you. It steadies you. Where your former self sought worth through accomplishments, praise, and recognition. You've stepped off that path. You've realized those were echoes of emptiness, not fulfillment. Now, contentment whispers in quiet ways, in the stillness of breath, in the intention behind your speech, in the quiet grace with which you carry yourself. And that, in itself, is everything. You find yourself able to gently release anything that no longer uplifts your spirit. Without conflict, without needing to prove anything, you begin to perceive life's challenges in a new light. They're no longer punishments or setbacks, but sacred thresholds, invitations for deeper growth. These moments are not here to break you, but to help uncover the parts of you that were long hidden or asleep. Instead of resisting, you face each challenge with quiet confidence, sensing deep down that this path is part of your becoming, and that very understanding shifts your energy at its core. Your presence no longer carries the weight of fear or hesitation. It vibrates with quiet truth, not a truth that needs explanation, but one that radiates clearly through your eyes, your calm, your being, and in that stillness, you come to realize something profound. The biggest shift wasn't in your outer world, it happened within you. The real change wasn't about rearranging the furniture of your life, it was about seeing everything through new, awakened eyes, no longer through the old lens of needing to earn, fix, or perform, but from a grounded place of knowing you're already whole. From that inner clarity, even the simplest things begin to shimmer with meaning. It's not that life outside has transformed, it's that your way of seeing has. Your perspective, once clouded by fear or expectation, now softens. It stretches, it fills with appreciation. You no longer demand signs or guarantees to keep going. You move forward because you trust, not with logic alone, but with your whole being. You begin to walk at a different pace, not necessarily slower, but more in tune with your inner flow. You stop chasing things that were never truly meant for you. You make choices from freedom now, not from pressure. Even when others don't understand, you allow yourself the grace to follow what feels right. You no longer try to control every detail, no longer fear the unknown. Instead, you make room for it, knowing the unknown carries its own wisdom. In this space of surrender, everything begins to fall into place, not because you're trying harder, but because you've stopped resisting, you've stopped pushing. Your very presence becomes magnetic, calling in only what truly aligns with you. You don't cling or force anymore. What is meant for you finds its way effortlessly. What isn't drifts away without drama. Even when hardship returns, it arrives differently. It no longer overwhelms or defines you. You're meeting it now from a steadier, more healed version of yourself. You don't need fast answers. You're here to understand, not to conquer. You're guided not by the need to prove your worth, but by a quiet longing to stay true to yourself. You meet life with presence now, not urgency. You let go of striving, and instead live from your essence. And from this place, everything begins to shift, not with noise or spectacle, but with quiet, complete transformation. This change doesn't arrive with fireworks. It's not marked by a specific date or event. It sneaks in quietly. One day you simply notice you don't respond the way you once did. The things that once pierced your heart now feel distant, like echoes that no longer belong to you. You're not pushing to become someone. You're simply allowing who you are to rise. And in that effortless becoming, life begins to respond softly, unmistakably. Not with chaos, but with signs that feel like home. With clarity, with quiet inner knowing. A sense of deep, rooted peace. And perhaps no one else will even notice the moment you transcended. Because it wasn't about them, it was about the stillness within you, the quiet truth that no longer needed validation. You're not who you were. And that shift, though invisible to the world, has rewritten everything. The urgency that once consumed your inner world is no longer there. You've changed not just in behavior, but in your very foundation. This transformation is so deep, it doesn't need to be labeled or explained. You feel it in your posture, in your calmness, in how you now choose stillness over spectacle. Peace, not performance, guides you. You can sit with silence now, no longer needing to fill the void with noise. You welcome the unknown, not with fear, but with trust. Your energy isn't scattered anymore. It's focused, rooted, flowing from a place within you that defies definition. This movement isn't driven by pressure, nor shaped by what others expect of you. It comes from something deeper, an unseen current within, untouched by names, stories, or the roles you've played. You're no longer here to uphold a version of yourself created for approval. You're here to express what's always been inside you, something real, something quietly powerful. That essence, the part of you that watched patiently while you were busy proving, pleasing, enduring, it's now at the forefront. And it didn't take a breakdown or a breakthrough. It happened in the moments you chose truth over habit, inner clarity over external comfort. That older version of you, the one driven by fear or validation, has stepped aside. In its place stands someone more grounded, more honest, more you. And from this space, a new kind of living begins, not based on reaction, but on presence. You've stopped chasing validation because your worth no longer needs confirmation. You no longer long to fit in because your soul remembers it was never separate to begin with. Life has shifted. It's no longer a race to be won or a problem to solve. It's become something sacred, a slow, rich unfolding. Not because everything is perfect now, but because you've stopped resisting what isn't. Each moment is no longer a hurdle. It's a chance to breathe, to feel, to just be. Not with defeat, but with the calm knowing that you are no longer at war with yourself. The loop you used to live enough doing just to get through is broken. Your days now carry meaning, not in big gestures, but in the quiet quality of your presence. Your words, your gaze, your actions all carry the quiet mark of someone who lives from within, not from reaction or fear, and that impact is real, even if unseen. Because someone who has made peace with their past doesn't need to shout to be heard. Their presence heals. It reassures. It inspires others to believe that wholeness isn't some distant idea, it's possible. Letting go doesn't erase what came before. Becoming more of yourself doesn't mean you've rejected who you were. It means you've made peace with every step that brought you here. Now, your energy speaks for you. It reaches beyond words, and the world responds not to your image, but to your essence. If these words stir something deep within, it's not chance that knowing was always there, just waiting for you to notice. Because becoming more of yourself isn't the end of something, it's the beginning. The moment when, finally, you come home to yourself. No armor, no performance. Just you fully present, fully alive. As Jung once said, true awakening doesn't come from imagining light. It comes from bringing light into the darkness, your darkness, and that's exactly what you've done. What brings light into your life isn't about escaping darkness, it's about learning to face it, to understand it. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding that simple but profound truth. Why? Because turning inward and facing the parts of yourself you've buried is one of the most difficult and powerful things you'll ever do. It's not just poetic language, it's real, it's raw, and sometimes it hurts. It means shedding the identity you've worn for years and meeting the version of yourself you've tried to hide, the version you feared others might see, or that you yourself couldn't bear to acknowledge. But if you're still listening right now, then something inside you has already shifted. You've crossed that line where fear no longer controls your curiosity. You've decided to stop escaping and to start facing. You've begun to dig through the hidden parts of your story, the pain, the habits, the buried emotions, and you're finally ready to hold space for them. That is not a small act. It is the foundation of genuine transformation. Your shadow, the parts of yourself you've repressed or rejected, was never your enemy. It's not something to be eliminated. It's part of your being, simply waiting to be acknowledged, understood, and embraced. When you finally allow yourself to see these pieces clearly, not with judgment, but with compassion, something profound begins to unfold. The pieces you thought were shattered become wells of wisdom. The fear you once ran from begins to show you the way. The inner confusion becomes a passage to clarity. You've already taken those steps. You've reached into the darker spaces of your being and said, I'm ready to understand. That's not weakness, that's bravery in its purest form. It's a path many avoid forever. But you didn't. Instead of letting your shadow weigh you down, you used it to rise. You've started living from a more honest place, a place that's steady, rooted, and deeply aligned with who you are beneath the surface. And if these words feel like they're speaking directly to something deep inside of you, it's because you're not alone. There's a quiet but powerful awakening happening across the world. More and more people are stepping away from the illusions and expectations that once defined them. They're choosing to live more openly, more authentically. They're picking truth over pretense, integrity over image, and healing over hiding. So if you feel the pull to continue exploring, to keep letting go of what's false and reconnect with what's real, stay with us. Every inner shift you make ripples outward. Each time you choose honesty over convenience, healing over avoidance, you're helping to bring a new kind of light into the world. One that's not artificial or forced, but natural, real, and lasting. You are no longer who you once were, and you are not walking this path by yourself. If this message resonates with that deep, wordless part of you that's been searching for something more, then stay close. This space exists for hearts like yours, It's for those who are ready to travel a different path, a path of meaning, awareness, and real presence. So if you feel called, become part of this shared journey, not just by subscribing to a channel, but by saying yes to your own growth. Because every message, every moment here is an offering, a reminder of the truth that's always lived within you. Let's keep moving forward together. Asterisk.